All right,
Awesome.
let's do it. I think we are ready.
We are
Mark, are you
ready.
ready?
I'm ready.
Yes.
I got all the change in the world for this AI era of what OneDrive is. That was the original title. Joy made it a lot better.
With marketing's assistance. Long live marketing. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Super excited to have you here. This is a topic you can probably tell. I'm excited to talk about it. Fun fact, and maybe even I don't know, controversial opinion, as I realize I don't have my lights on. OneDrive's actually my favorite M365 app. My favorite. It's super powerful. It's super useful. Maybe one day we'll put together like a tips and tricks of getting the most out of OneDrive. But as a governance person, Mark, tell me your thoughts. I think we really need to start thinking about how we're handling OneDrive these days.
I think so. I think to your point as well, I always have cherished OneDrive as a place where I start my day or a place where you can start your day because it is, if you're document centric or you're working on things, there are used to be a lot of places where you could start to go find what was I doing last or what was that thing that was shared with me or what do I do next? You know, if you're kind of looking for the kind of I've finished an exercise of
Mm-hmm.
work and now I need to move to the next thing. OneDrive, from a files perspective, has all that activity and it gives you a really great place to start your day or at least to start the next thing that you're looking for without then going and looking all over the place. That being said, it also is kind of a blend of your world and your colleagues' world or all the people that you're working with. So it can
Oh,
be a blend of not just my files, but my files plus plus. And that's a good thing.
100%.
But from a governance perspective and just SharePoint and OneDrive in general, where you store your files, it's all available to everybody in the company, not from a permissions perspective, but from a search and gathering perspective. It
Why?
is a place you can put content, and that is a place that is available to not just you in the context of this era of AI and search and the graph and all that stuff that we're going to talk
Yeah,
about.
all the things. We're going to get into it. But
Mm-hmm.
before we do, in case we've never met before, my name is Joy Apple. I'm the Director of Success and Enablement at Orchestry Software. I've been working in this Microsoft space for about 19 years now. I have opinions, I have stories, I have trauma, but we won't have time for all that today. Mark, who are you?
I am Mark Kashman. I'm a principal consultant over at Sympraxis Consulting. I focus a lot on SharePoint, a lot on Microsoft 365 in the broader terms, but really focus on SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and Lists and Loop are some of my other favorite apps. But in the history of my past, I've also been a product manager of SharePoint. And my one little thing I get to throw out in this specific seminar is I actually was for about 4 months the interim OneDrive product manager on the marketing side. That was a while ago, and it was a fun stint. I've always worked with the OneDrive team, no matter in what capacity, then and now. But anyway, so I got to make a couple of decisions, and then they were like, "All right, we're moving on. We're hiring somebody now."
Enough of that.
Enough of that guy. But it's great to be here. Love talking about OneDrive, showing it, and especially in the context of there's a lot of stuff for end users. It's a super focused, nice user experience for everyone. And it
Mm-hmm.
has a great IT story, and the team behind it really focuses on both. And in this new era of AI that we're going to get into, there's some more things that are being derived and pulled from OneDrive, but it is still really that tool for your personal, files and collective of how you're working with others. And some of the user interface, if you haven't seen it for a while, we'll cover that pretty quickly off the bat.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. And just in case you've never heard of this little thing called Orchestry, I get it. That's fine.
Mm,
I might be. Am I offended? I'm not offended. It's fine. But we are an M365 governance automation platform. That's about all I'm going to say about this right now. But if you do want information, just call me. It's fine. I can hook you up. Please do get engaged. This chat is open. Technically, the Q&A is there. Personally, I'm a fan of just dumping everything in chat, and Mark and I will go through it as we do our thing. If for any reason we can't get to all of the questions, if we have time at the end, we'll circle back or we'll reach out to you directly with some answers and some information. And okay, I guess marketing does want me to cover all the ways to find us on all the socials. So what are
I
we
will
doing
say
today?
just as the external to Orchestry, because of course, this being your webinar, there's going to be a little bit of marketing and some things that if you kind of hit a nerve on something, there's always go learn more and discover and maybe schedule for a real depth demo. But I will say you all put out a lot of great content. This webinar, I think we both can claim as selfishly one of them. But across the years, months, weeks, days, the stuff that puts out is put out by Orchestry. Of course, they're there to sell and talk about Orchestry, but it's always couched, and I think more than others, in a significant amount of information that may lead to Orchestry helping you if you choose. But the lead up to that, the various webinars, and if you see them at events, these are people that are steeped in Microsoft 365 with a product that takes it further than the out-of-box experience. But it is also just in the best practices mode, community friendly. So a lot of the content, if you choose to follow them in whatever social way or go and tap them on the shoulder at their booth at an event when you see them, you're always going to get a little bit more than just the products that they're selling. So that's my 2 cents, and the reality of I see it as a partner of Orchestry, but also just as an admirer from afar.
Wow, much appreciated. Such kind words. All right. Today's poll. Yes, we have a poll because we need to know. Let me get in here and launch it. I don't usually hit the launch button. It's like, it should be red. Launch. So we have questions for you. Yay, it worked. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait to hear all the various responses that you have to this. Yes, Sherman, sometimes when we are at events, we do have maple syrup from Canada for you. So that's even more incentive to come talk to us. But questions we have: how would you describe your organization's approach to OneDrive? So please come in, answer some questions. We're going to give it, I see.
And just a reminder, these are meant to be a little silly and telling, but also know that they're not being recorded in terms of who answered what. So they're not going to come hunting after you like, you don't know about your policies, you silly fool. That is not the intent.
Yes, that is not at all the intent. This is a safe space. So we're going to give this a few minutes. Okay, yay. It was taking a minute. I thought nothing was happening, but now the numbers are updating. Whew. Mark, I thought I had a user error.
Which means we've got now 11. We've got 49 people. All right.
Come on now.
Remember, it doesn't hurt to respond. It's fun to engage, and it gives the more metrics to basically have the more targeted conversation depending on who showed up and what you know in your approach.
That's right. That's right. 23 responses so far. Okay. We'll give it just another couple of moments to click through. I'm going to dismiss it for myself because, I mean, I really can't answer my own poll. That doesn't seem very scientific. I am curious. I think the last question, because I'm as a governance person, but also very passionate about end user adoption, about do our users understand what stays in OneDrive? Maybe it starts there, but then maybe it should go other places. So I'm curious about that. All right, I'm going to give it, we've got 32 responses. I'm going to count down from 5, 4, 3, 3.5, 2, 2.5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. Oh, I just got the last one in.
Oh, no.
Oh, Bill, I'm sorry I had a problem with the poll.
Put your response in chat, Bill.
Yeah, I'm going to close the poll. First options are all the correct ones, but just because it's correct doesn't mean it's accurate, right? So I find this interesting. How do you describe your approach to governance? The majority of you say you have policies somewhere. 11% governance. It's personal storage, right? I mean, define personal. It is a company-owned asset. And I think that's where it gets a little bit murky. OneDrive isn't necessarily the place you should have like your rant Word document that you keep open and all your angry thoughts go there. I'm not saying you shouldn't have one of those somewhere, right? it gets a little murky there. Let's see. Do you enforce OneDrive storage quotas? 35% of you said yes, but only when someone hits the limit. So yeah, hit the limit and you're like, hey, friend. 32%. Ooh, the second highest response. Quotas. Everyone gets the cloud buffet. All you can eat. Just go nuts. All right, all right. How do you monitor oversharing from OneDrive? Ooh, it's a tie. 43%. We check if there's an incident. We assume permissions are working as intended. Now, I don't know about y'all. My mama taught me to be very careful with the word assume, but I'll leave that right there. But right, we do kind of make those presumptions. Those boundaries are there. The options are there, so they must be there for a reason. Awesome.
Yeah, I like the inference of some of the responses and also the general backing of some of why the questions resonate is OneDrive is absolutely an application that IT can manage at scale for lots of different scenarios. You know, the quota that people get, how people use it, how people shouldn't use it. You can enforce how you share, all those things that are how you dial it up and down as an admin, but also how you then affect the uses of the application, be it good or bad, or you're trying to keep the information and people safe. If you do it, too tightened of a screw, it's hard to unbolt and people may go around it. But the value of there's a lot of choices that IT can make, especially if you have a governance plan or a notion of one, what you can then dial up and dial down to support the how you want to do business in the context of how people and employees are going to do it, whether they're leaving the company or working hard and you want to do it in a certain way. It is a very manageable product. It is something that you can influence for everyone, even if it's meant to be, don't look of what I put here, but still with some guardrails that maybe don't influence or impact the actual use of the product.
100%. Lots of things to think about. And we're going to go over some of those in mere moments. Last, but definitely not least, do users understand when to move content out of OneDrive and into shared spaces? 67% of you. Some do, some absolutely do not. And the second highest there was, we assume they know. But then, double digits, move it where now? I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to fill that out. So, Mark, this thing called OneDrive.
This thing called OneDrive. It really has been around for a very long time. The history of it is wide and deep in terms of how you look at it. And even in the chat, somebody posted its prior name of SkyDrive until that one English company that we won't mention, but that rename and the purchase of Groove in the past and Groove.exe and syncing everywhere. But it really has evolved to be not only a companion to SharePoint, but an evolution of what used to be your My site, where I put things for me. The My documents really evolved into what we call OneDrive. So it's backed by SharePoint. It has a lot of the same policy and controls for IT. But from a use case perspective, it is where you do your work on files. And those could be files that you own and start and maybe move and graduate, or you're just always consuming from shared spaces on things that you don't technically own, but that you need. Like a great folder to follow or have in your OneDrive would be the packet of sales materials if you're a salesperson and you always need the updated versions instead of always going to the SharePoint site where the marketing team put approved materials. Why not add that one specific folder or set of folders into your OneDrive so you always have it with you, literally maybe syncing down all the way to your device. But that enables you to then have what you need. And there's lots of other things, when you start to think about OneDrive. How else do you describe it, Joy?
My default line is personal work storage. I always like to make sure we remember it's owned by your organization. And we need to keep in mind those are work assets. That whole right to privacy thing, it's really not a thing at work. I actually have a whole session I do. I'm going to be doing it where am I speaking next where I'm doing this? I think in Chicago with TechCon. The TMO, are there too many options in M365? So let's break it down. And OneDrive for one person by default. OneDrive for one person. Now, Mark, this PowerPoint presentation, I think, still lives in my OneDrive.
That is correct.
It's mine.
I have a tiny little part of my demo where I'll prove on how I got access to this presentation so that I could add to it, learn from it, and of course, prepare for today. But it is a link to Joy's OneDrive.
It's a link to my OneDrive, to this file in my OneDrive. Now, my marketing people don't appreciate that because they need to do stuff with this as soon as this webinar is done. But I don't need them messing with it yet. So as soon as this wraps, I will move it. And I love my marketing people, but they love their folders. I will move it to the webinar folder in the webinar channel once this wraps, so they have access to it. So it is OneDrive for one purpose, but I can choose to then share it to the appropriate people at the appropriate time. But guess what? When I'm done with the editing of this, it needs to move to a shared space, SharePoint, accessible via the Teams channel, where the appropriate audience has the level of access they need.
And I had a similar approach that was sort of in the way back days of how the marketing team, which I was a part of, did it for a while. It was sort of that, you can start it and put it anywhere and go through as long as we agree on where the final is. But for a while, it was standard where you could work on it wherever. I chose OneDrive to create my presentation, just like Joy was describing. And that was a full PowerPoint file. The only thing I put in the shared space, and this was by design and in how we chose the process, I would output a PDF and move that as presented file that nobody could edit, both internally, and then sometimes it would get posted externally along with the video. Here are the resources, the transcript, the original PowerPoint, but the original PowerPoint was in PDF format. So, there was just that sort of, what is your aligned process? For me at that time, work on PowerPoint in OneDrive, save as PDF when finished, completed, to have that as a finished, as presented asset. But the one thing I don't want to forget on this slide before we move into seeing the product, I have more than these 3 installed on my iPhone, but I think the 3 most useful applications from a Microsoft 365 perspective, and in whatever order if you agree or disagree, but for me it's still Outlook, and then Teams, and then OneDrive, because of the common things you want to do when you're on the go. It's literally a powerful tool. A lot of times I use OneDrive to capture receipts, so it has a nice scanning mechanism. Then you can write and dock it up. It's also a very common thing when somebody asks, hey, can you send me a link to that file? Instead of opening up the laptop and going through the share dialog, you can do the same thing on mobile. And because Hotmail or whatever version you have of your personal side of things, it's one of those apps that switches between personal and work really well. So
it does.
It's
beautiful.
I've had OneDrive or whatever it was called 20 years ago, literally, when I had Hotmail, and I still have it. That's a big part of the side of it, which is now technically on SharePoint, which is kind of a fun little nuance of OneDrive, no matter where you're at, is now backed by SharePoint.
Yep. I love it. I use it, especially when I travel. I use it the most. But when, you get that, somebody shares something with you, and 4 days later, you're like, where was that? Was that a link in Teams? Did it come through email? Where was that thing? I go to OneDrive, I go to shared, and I don't have, it doesn't matter. I can get to all the stuff there. And that's probably something you're going to demo. So I'm going to stop talking and we'll move on to the next slide before I give away your secrets. But real quick, Sharon, if you're still not seeing the slides being displayed, the only thing I can think is to maybe try dropping out and popping right back in. Maybe something happened with your connection on the interwebs. I feel like everybody else can see it. I'm sorry, Teams is picking on you today. All right, Mark, get to know OneDrive. I know this is where you're going to do our little, I think, some razzle dazzle for us.
Yeah, we've got some demos coming up, but the first demo is kind of the if you've seen it from a first run experience, at least from a messaging perspective, but to start to understand what is OneDrive before you start to see it in action in about 20 seconds, is you will see this. This is sort of the marketing of the tool within the tool. So from a Microsoft messaging perspective, it tells you everything that it wants to tell you about what it is. So there's definitely a high level of security. Even if you have open policies and ways of sharing, you're still in Microsoft 365, you're still in SharePoint. So there's still a high level of security compared to the rest of the industry. And then its notion is to share your files, to work on content, to work with others, to work across your files and some shared spaces, which we will see. So this is what you see when you first see it, and we thought it was just a nice cheat code for what is OneDrive. But the better what is OneDrive is to see it in action. So as long as I'm on the right schedule and we have the sharing mechanism, let's start to share out some screen and see some OneDrive. And you're going to see two OneDrives, both Archies, which is what you see here in a demo environment. And then I was going to show a couple things in my real environment. But this is a quick tour. This is not meant to be an all-inclusive demo across all of OneDrive. It's really to start to show you some of the new things and some of the things you should be aware of when you start thinking about it from an IT or a governance perspective, which we're leading up to. But on the home experience, and I really love in the latest updates from the SharePoint team, there's also coming back this sort of start experience. So it used to be you go to office.com, and once you're signed in, you have a really great start experience around your files, your sites, and this and that to be able to create. And OneDrive has always maintained that. The homepage is really oriented around what have you done recently and how do you get back to it? What was shared with you? What were you working on? The different things that you should be able to easily hop back into. And it's really pervasive across all content types. So when you go to the homepage, you'll be able to do things like pivot very quickly and filter down to things like just Excel files. I think some of the hidden value is actually in the more. And when Microsoft Loop came about, this was the place that I would send people to once I learned about it, to go easily find your Loop files if you didn't know about going to the Loop app. So because Loop files are a file stored in your OneDrive most often, it's an easy way to get back to them. And there's now a really nice pivot to go to your Loop files, your lists, and all of that. But it really is oriented around content, not just files to some extent, but a lot around files. So you can see what you're mostly working on. That's the home experience. When you log into OneDrive, onedrive.cloud.microsoft, it'll take you there and you'll have a home experience. It's also where you can start to create or upload. This used to be the new button. And the one confusing part that I wouldn't be surprised if this jumped to the right at some point. I don't know that from an insider perspective yet, but in SharePoint, the create and upload is now on the right side of a document library, but in your individual document library, your OneDrive, the create and upload, which really means what it sounds like. You can create a new folder. You can upload files or folders with files in them, or create things. These are pretty standard, and if you work in SharePoint, you can use content types and all that good stuff. But it really is a place to start new content, and it goes into your OneDrive. No surprise there where this gets stored. Always important, where do you start a file? And the knowledge that you can move it or copy it to other places. And one of the most important ones, if you've never used it, is a link. You can create a link to something like a YouTube video if it's important enough to track and keep it in the right folder so that it's a way to get to something. But again, create and or upload replaces the new button. That's probably not news to everybody, but it is important to know that they're trying to unify the overall experience. Whether you like the changes or not recently, there's a lot of good and there's a lot of some confusing. But the big difference, I think, between OneDrive and SharePoint these days is the left to right or of the create or upload button. Anyway, moving on to my files, and these are Archie's files. But if I'm Archie, these are my files. And you start to see a lot of how I organize. And the couple things that I want to point out here are both how we share from my files, and of course I can share. So I want to talk about the new sharing dialog. And you'll start to see here the difference between these different folders are folders that haven't been shared. So they kind of look like this blank, whatever color is chosen. This is the default yellow. You can see folders that are being shared. You see it here in the sharing column, but you also see it here where it looks like the two people icon. And then what we'll talk about a little bit is the add to OneDrive. I'm pulling in information from another space, another SharePoint space, or sometimes people think of it as a Teams space, which is fine because the files in Teams are the same as the document library in the connected SharePoint site. But these are effectively folders or whole libraries that are managed by the team versus ones that I own. These that look blank are ones that I've created, owned, and managed, and I haven't shared with anybody, so they're private. This one is opened up a little bit. It's in my OneDrive, like Joy shared her one PowerPoint file with me to help on this presentation. So that's got, some element of things in here being shared. And this assumes that the entire membership of a team is using this particular folder or file. So let's talk a little bit about sharing. I'm going to go down here to a pitch deck, and you can either click on it and get this extended menu at the top where you'll see the share button and the difference between share and copy link. Copy link is if somebody has access already, that link will just work for them. It's the default sharing link. But if I want to go in and talk about the new sharing experience, I'm going to click on the share button. It's down here in line as one of the top level choices. It's also up here if you select a file. And here's where I can name people like Joy, and she'll start to gain access. I can choose what type of access. Will she be able to edit? Let's make it so just a talking point. She can only view this. I can send her a message, and this will send an email. But if I really want to get into the gist of what is it that I'm sending to Joy, this particular one is starting to share as an anyone file because they have anonymous sharing turned on in this environment. But if I really want to limit it, so anything Joy does is just for her, she can't forward it to anybody. And in fact, she can only view for a period of time. Let's give her 2 weeks to respond. Give that to apply. I can send her a note. Hi, Joy. Here is the goodness. And then I'll send a message with that link. But I can also copy the link. And while I'm doing that, you can see the pop-up. This might be because I'm outside of the environment. Oh. But basically, it would be able to, we'll try it here.
She's mad.
What is it going to let me do? I should have tested this.
The demo gods are petty and
yeah,
cool.
Right. But anyway, I would get this link, copy it down, and it'll always tell you as you hover over or in the action of doing it. What
Archie's over his quota.
Ability. Yeah, that's right. So I think it's because we have a full, which is my last part of my demo handoff to Joy. So keep that in mind. But anyway, the concept here is you should always be aware of the type of sharing link that you're creating, and that as you go into these various levels of kind of the behind the scenes of the simple sharing dialogue, you always have the ability to create and choose the link that you want with the permission structure that you prefer. So anyway, you can do that and grab the link and send it as a mail or send it as in a chat. And depending on the type of link that you create, if it were to be forwarded, if it was only for Joy and it expired by the 27th, she'd be able to use it, but on the 28th, it would expire. If I had it as an anyone link that expired on the 27th, anybody that Joy forwarded it to, of course, would be able to then use it. But let's talk about Add to OneDrive. It's a great feature, and in the context of what Microsoft is working on, they want to minimize the use of the sync button and optimize and extend the use of Add to OneDrive. And there's a lot of benefits to using Add to OneDrive. These two, if you notice up here, it says OneDrive, but as I click into this Add to OneDrive folder, it actually lives in a project site, and I've got it up here just to switch it over to it. But this is now keeping me within the OneDrive user interface, but I'm now connected to SharePoint. And it's because I went into SharePoint, like I'm going to go into here, and you can see this, it's Friday document that I created. If I go up a level, it's within the documents. And this is something that I could add a shortcut to OneDrive. It's based on this Friday Club site. So I'm going to do that. And this will show me the progress here. And we're getting those same blockers because the quota limit is reached, but that's fine because we're getting the notification, which is good. And that would be troubleshooting for Archie. Why isn't this working? And the way that it works, because we already did it when we had quota available, is it creates this then arrow icon that gives me then quick access to that document library. Instead of going to the Friday Club, clicking on documents and then seeing it, I'd be able to go in here, click on my Add to OneDrive shortcut, and it would take me to that set of content that I was wanting to take with me. And now, because it's with me, in the context of Add to OneDrive, this is my personal OneDrive. You'll see that they also flow down from a sync perspective through the sync client. And this is using some of those same folders. This is at Sympraxis, we have a webinar that we do called Ask Sympraxis. And this is a shortcut to the Ask Sympraxis team site that we set up, where we've got all our main materials, including all of the Sympraxis decks, which is the most important thing for me to work on locally. And this is our latest one. This is our full archive. And you see it gives me nice access, still within the context of OneDrive, to access something that's a shared site experience for all of the members of our team here at Sympraxis. But back to my OneDrive, you can see this is my files, and these are the Add to OneDrive folders that you would see here, same as Archie sees in my files. The last thing that I want to talk about is Copilot, and then we'll get to this whole why is Archie seeing this storage is full. 112%, which means we had a little leeway to give to Archie. We'll let Joy talk about that. But let's see a little bit in the context of my real environment. This is my files at Sympraxis. And I wanted to show you, if you haven't used it, the ability to create an agent, a real Microsoft 365 agent, but just on the content that you choose within your OneDrive. So you can do it in SharePoint. It's called a SharePoint agent. There's all the big news that just was released about AI in SharePoint. I think selfishly, this is also a part of the AI in SharePoint, but this is AI in OneDrive. And you always see it here within Copilot, and it's very contextual. If I select this folder, you'll see it up here, and it'll give me a sense of what can I do. And depending on what you select, I can multi-select 5 files and then create an agent. But I'm just going to do it in the context of this blogs folder, which, just to show you, has these 4 blogs in it. These are Word documents that are real blogs now that are out there. But if I select it and click on the Copilot and create an agent, it is doing just that, what it sounds like, using this folder of content. And I can give it a name. We'll give it a blogs agent, and we'll put in, Orchestry, just so you can see it. And then there's a lot that you can do, obviously, to change the source. The source right now is just that folder. I can change the behavior in terms of the prompts that I show, or other people using this agent in the future, the things that it can do, I can help them. I'm not going to boil too much time except for to go in and essentially create this agent so that you can see it in action. And I'm just wanting to get to, of course, and for some reason this is not opening up. So I'm going to jump to, not wasting too much of our time, and show you the agent that I already created. Ta-da! But if that had created, you would have seen the blogs agent, and I'll try to troubleshoot that later. And this is if you see it, a marketing brand agent. This is where I can ask the various questions about how Sympraxis does branding from a marketing perspective. I'm sure Orchestry has a similar site, maybe even a governance site within the tenant. But from a OneDrive perspective, I can create an agent, name it what I want. You can see here it's created by me from my OneDrive. I can ask things. What are the guidelines? And just like you would expect in a chat experience, this will be tailored experience because of the content that I pointed it to. Same as a SharePoint agent, I can focus it on a set of folders, document libraries, and a variety of things. And of course, I'm getting sort of a bland response here. So we don't burn too much time, I'm going to move us on and get back to Archie so that we can talk about why is Archie seeing the storage is full. Joy, can you help us with that and maybe even help me get out of this predicament?
Well, so Archie is a prolific content creator. He just is. He is the chief marketing officer at Orchestry. If you've never met him, he's a French bulldog. So he creates lots of content. Most of it has to do with treats and chicken, from what I understand. There's all kinds of ways to get around that. Out of the box, though, it's kind of difficult. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about some things. We're going to look at some stuff. But first, let me do the kind of painful thing about resharing inside of PowerPoint Live here. And I'll do the slide hop. Here it is. Here it is. Let me see. Hey,
and I'll just put it out there, even though a couple parts of the demo gods weren't 100% with me today. But if there's anything that you saw or didn't see or have a question about from a user perspective, the user experience, some of the recent changes, and you have a pointed question, I'd love to address it, especially if I showed it or didn't show it. All things are open to be questioned and answered.
Yes.
And while Joy's going here, I can certainly focus on the chat and address any of those.
Perfection. So Mark's given us that tour, kind of a whirlwind tour through a OneDrive. If we had time in, we would do a deep dive on all the things. I think some of us still don't understand how powerful it can be. But, and this was reflected in the chat too, I think it was Ray. It's like users see it as their own personal thing. Things get a little out of hand. And to complicate where things go wrong, we tend to see where it starts one driving us crazy is there is this oversharing of content from OneDrive to the broader audience of the organization, when maybe it should have been in SharePoint to start with. Maybe we usually stay in Teams, right? Which we know the content storage is SharePoint. So please don't ding me if I say we put it in Teams. I know we don't. But we see over and over again, files are shared outside of our OneDrive to these other people over and over and over again. And we see those same behaviors in SharePoint too. We have something inside of a SharePoint site, a Teams channel, whatever, and we see sharing links from that to broader audiences over and over and over again. Most of the time, those links aren't set to expire, right? So those links live forever. When Mark was showing off creating sharing links, right? If we share an anyone link or an anyone in the organization link and it lives forever, that means like today that audience could be 2 people. Like, Mark, I probably shared with you an anyone link to the deck. Why? Because I'm lazy. I also trust Mark. I trust Mark implicitly. Mark could go send this deck to all of his closest friends and family. Anyone with an email address can get that link. For this content, well, I love it. Share it. Spread the good news of governance in OneDrive. But if this was a financial report, and that audience just keeps growing and growing, not necessarily maliciously, links travel, right? That audience gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And maintaining those shared drafts that are in OneDrive and the copy that got moved to SharePoint/Teams. What's the source of truth, right? Did we move it? Did we copy it, right? Do our users know that there's a difference between move and copy? Do we understand the full force? Well, I need to save the copy just in case. Just in case what? Right? So we start having these conversations and seeing that, especially with the power of the graph and search, anyone that clicks on that sharing link, they have redeemed their authentication token and they have gained access to it. So the graph now knows that Mark has access to this, that Bob has access to this, right? So search and Copilot now are able to use that to answer their questions. I don't know about a guest, and Mark, that really doesn't apply, but right, those sharing links now are giving them grounding in search because they've redeemed those authentication tokens. All right, think about that. I want to throw this out here too. I may harp on this later, just fair warning. We talk a lot about oversharing, as well we should. I don't think we talk enough about undersharing either. If I'm sharing the world's most important spreadsheet out of my OneDrive, that means I've only shared it with a very small audience. I've explicitly done that. What if that should be available to everyone in my company? And it's not. Now they don't have that data to fully inform the decisions they're making. That can cost time and money too, right? So there's lots of different ways we can look at this. And the power of the graph, the power of Copilot, the power of whatever, insert AI agent name here, that data in our OneDrive is becoming knowledge. But the question is it becoming knowledge to too many people? Or is it not knowledge for enough people? Do we have it in the right place with the right level of access at the right time? Mark and I, sounds like, I don't know if you still do, I still tend to, I start from OneDrive. Because what if it's stupid? What if I'm writing this blog that marketing's asked me to write, And I think it's brilliant, but it's just really dumb. Or I'm just not getting the point across. So I'm going to start in my private personal work storage, and then I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it to somebody. Maybe I share it to our director of product or our one of our salespeople and go, does it make sense? Is it okay? I'll get some eyes on it first, then move it to the appropriate location when I know it's good to go.
Yeah, I follow the same practice. And I would say for the things that I do on a daily or weekly basis, it sort of all starts in OneDrive. And I mean that with a little cheekiness because whether it's a folder that I've taken from SharePoint and I've added it to my OneDrive, like the Sympraxis one that I showed, or like the blogs that I showed, the blogs folder is sort of just for me until I share it. And it's a similar work stream as what Joy was describing. I want to kind of get a V0 of the blog, start to finish, the outline, the opening paragraph, the intended graphics, maybe the learn more links, whatever it is the intention is. And I want to get all that thinking and progress before anybody jumps on and starts to tell me, oh, you forgot about this or you forgot about that. Sort of like,
Right.
no, for a little while, it's not that I forgot about it. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So when I present a V1 to the team, I want it to be a little bit more fully fleshed versus
Right.
a start where there's going to be some open questions. The Ask Sympraxis side of things, though, I have it in my OneDrive because I'm always accessing it. It's part of my work stream to create the deck for the team now. And where I create the deck, the intention is everybody from day one needs to have access to it, besides the structure, the title card, the main slides, the closing. Those are always going to be similar because we have a template and of course we're going to use it. But I always start that in the shared space, but I have it in my OneDrive because I use it often. So when I click to create a new PowerPoint there, the template that gets used and then is available to everybody, they still aren't really going to work on it until I say, hey, the PowerPoint for the next Ask Sympraxis is ready. It is in the space that it needs to be already by default because I know everybody's going to pile on and work on V1 collectively. So everything is managed and viewable from my OneDrive perspective, but where the file starts and maybe even where it finishes might be OneDrive and or SharePoint. And we haven't really talked about move. I probably should have demoed that, but to move a file from OneDrive to SharePoint, super easy. And if we have a little bit of time, I got the OneDrive agent demo to work because a little pop-up to sign in to my account. I didn't see that. So it was blocking me because I hadn't signed in, even though I had refreshed the page to get ready for the demo. Anyway, I have that to show, hopefully, so we can kind of see it in action, and I can quickly demo the move feature too.
Yeah, we'll show off a few little things when we get to the end. Kind of going through, looking through questions. Can I have a list or report of all the files I have shared? Sam, SharePoint Advanced Management only does point in time reports. So it wouldn't be comprehensive. I want to say this would be a PowerShell action. Am I right on that, Mark?
Yeah, it's not an end user feature, so there isn't any UI outside of when you go to your home of your OneDrive, you can see what's been shared or what's been shared with you. There is a shared pivot. So if you went to your OneDrive and you kind of open it up and click on the shared tab, you can do what's been shared with you. So somebody else shared to you, and something that is then the opposite is what have I shared out? And so it's really a generic list with two filter pivots where you can see over time and back for a certain amount of time, not for the end of time, but it goes on for a quite amount. You can see it from a reporting perspective. It's just a list of what have I recently been shared with or what have I shared to. But beyond the user experience, which is just that UI, there would be ways for an admin to go in, of course, to be able to do a full report on everybody's OneDrive, an individual's OneDrive, or a set of people's OneDrives, whatever that might be. Same as you'd be able to see the information in SharePoint from who's been shared with what, especially something like an external guest type report. You can do that with OneDrive from an admin perspective, to what Joy said, using PowerShell, because it is just another site collection. It happens to be called OneDrive.
OneDrive. Right. So all these things we're talking about, though, really they boil down to signals. So who loves acronyms? I do. So we've come up with a new acronym for you. It's not short, I'm sorry, but I like it. I like it a lot because it was my idea. Now, Signal. So in here, your settings, your insights, governance, nurturing. And when I'm saying nurture, I got a little creative on this one, okay? It's just that concept of making sure people understand where your content starts and then where it should grow and live, right? Because a lot of our stuff, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it probably shouldn't stay in OneDrive. Then looking at access and literacy, right? Literacy makes it scalable. It helps people understand at large when to use what, where to start, how to move, where to pivot, how to manage their storage, all kinds of good stuff. Now, admittedly, and I take this, Mark, as a personal offense, that it has become harder and harder and harder to manage OneDrive as a whole, right? We used to have an admin center. We don't anymore. Reports are kind of lumped up under some of the SharePoint stuff, which is fine. I kind of get that, but I don't like it. It has become kind of a difficult thing. But settings, if your settings are wide open, things are going to get noisy and chaotic. They're going to be overshared. If you don't have at least an expiration on any one links, if you're allowing those, right? You could have folks sharing internal content literally with anyone. That could very much be a problem. Now, at Orchestry, I can share out of OneDrive with anyone because it's appropriate. But with great power comes great responsibility, right? Been trained, and we've got some tools. I'm gonna make sure and get to where I can show you some of this good stuff in Orchestry that is available. Bethany alluded to some of it earlier, I do believe. If we don't have insight, if we can't see who's maxed at their quota, so they're limited in what they can do with their OneDrive, they're eating up storage space, right? There's risks involved with that. If we can't see what's been overshared or potentially undershared, right? There's risks involved with that. I mean, how many times have we had what I call it the screen test? Somebody's OneDrive became disabled and half the company couldn't get to this document that they've been using for years. Right? Happens. It happens way more frequently than we want it to. Governance is going to define the boundaries of those signals. As an organization, we set the table for the business and say, yes, it is your personal work storage. It is work related. We once had an employee, this is when I was a Moss Farm admin. We had someone leave, and in their OneDrive was like all these video downloads and pirated music. That's not what it's for, okay? But we define what it's for, how to use it, right? And we put some boundaries around there, not just to keep things easy for them, but safe for the organization. Nurture, make sure we understand when things move, they move intentionally. When they're shared, it's shared correctly and with the proper intent. Access, that's the amplification, right? Because as I share something, that data is amplified throughout the organization via the graph, right? So all kinds of good stuff out there. Someone picking on me about my moss. Let me see. Yeah.
That was me selfishly. I just wanted to jump in on the access or the sort of the signal side of Signal, not only just an acronym of its own, but it used to be a really great way, and I think I still hear people talk about it this way, to describe the value of the Microsoft graph, which is hugely valuable and maybe a little bit more hidden, maybe re-architected to be named Work IQ these days. But the real value is, what are you working on? Who do you work with? What are they working on? And what are the relationships between all of that? And because if you are a OneDrive user, you're sending the system signals all the time. What content are you interested in? What type of people and who are you working with from across your organization? And those will start to dictate a little bit of what you see in the behaviors, not only in the new Copilot chat, but in your search experience and in the awareness of others. You know, the sort of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon using OneDrive, which I think is a real thing.
That's a thing.
If Kevin is working on a specific folder with, another colleague that you work with 2 or 3 clicks away, the graph is going to know Kevin Bacon is within your sphere of influence, and you will start to see things because of what other people are doing, and vice versa. They're going to see things based on what you do. And those signals are constantly changing. But you should know a big signal or lots of signals come from OneDrive, the same as they come from Teams and SharePoint and Outlook. Who do you meet with? What are you working on? What do you share? Did you touch that file when they shared it with you? That shows intent and lots of influence and interest. So OneDrive is just another place that you can work that sends the system a lot of signals, which influences the graph, which ultimately influences Copilot and how Copilot functions for you and for others because of that information set, which is always being refined and changed as the search crawler does its thing throughout the day.
100%. And the last thing on this slide, I'll say, I'm just going to drop this little bomb into the chat and then move on. Literacy equals training, right? We don't know what we don't know. So if Shay's just been told, here's your OneDrive, it's yours, do whatever you want with it. Oh, right? So things to think about as I move on to the next slide quickly. Make things go right. Selfish plug, Liz Stanton on our marketing team wrote a really great article. It's available through this link. You will be getting a copy of this recording and the slides later. But just know this is out there for you. But kind of picking up kind of on those signal things again, right? From a governance perspective, what kind of controls do we have around the sharing? What kind of reporting are we doing? Even if it's PowerShell, hell, right? If we don't have an out of the third-party tool, out of the box is what we've got. It does matter.
Are you saying that OneDrive puts the hell in PowerShell?
You said it.
I think I heard you say it. I'm going to quote Joy on LinkedIn. That's what I heard. It's
recorded. Mark said it. I merely implied things, right? Thinking about our offboarding. What happens when Joy wins the lottery, retires to Bora Bora, right? Does her OneDrive go poof? Does her manager get it? Does he only get it for a certain period of time before it goes poof? Does he know that he's getting it? Or she, as the case may be, right? Having these conversations will be super, super vital. And AI has accelerated and amplified the need to have these conversations and make these decisions. So
I was going to just take, I think, about 15 seconds to layer in how a feature can apply to a good governance practice versus maybe something in the past, which it graduated from. So I showed the feature add to OneDrive. And Microsoft has kind of signaled that that is the preferred feature. The sync button, there's even a way to remove the sync button. Their concepts of moving away from sync, not the sync client, but just the act of clicking the sync button and using add to OneDrive. It gives you a lot of benefits. But from a governance perspective, there's one element where if you're using the sync ability, which means you on one device, you click sync and it syncs it down, the relationship, the metadata, all that good stuff. It might start to open up some areas of compliance around, especially if you've got desktop compliance concepts, because the add to OneDrive sort of treats it as something that is available across all devices. That's a benefit. But if you start to do the remove, something that you've added to OneDrive, you can also remove it so that it's just a link that goes away. The shortcut goes away. But it also does a little bit better cleanup of the files versus sync. If you unsync, you still have the pile of files that you originally sync and available metadata. And it's not impossible to get rid of those files, but it's kind of an extra step that people might forget about. So in the era of AI and features like add to OneDrive as a part of your governance plan, moving to that, not just because at some point sync might not become available, because they've signaled that in some future state, there may not be the sync capability. There's just add to OneDrive. Beyond that, it just starts to articulate how you work with your files and how people work with OneDrive also can support a better governance plan or a better adoption of your governance and policy plan.
100%. And those things definitely matter. And I wish Teams wouldn't move my window around. So very quickly, I thought I'd show something off.
Yeah, this is cool stuff.
I love this. We've not had this before. This is new to Orchestry.
Is this the
Because
first time that you've demoed this publicly, just this feature set of Orchestry? I just wanted to know.
Michael and David did a little preview before it launched, but I believe this is our first official viewing of it publicly since Orchestry Enterprise launched, and that does include OneDrive capabilities. So the first things we're launching with are some reports around OneDrive. In fact, one of my favorite buttons in all of Orchestry is always the reports button. So you can actually come in, get a visual representation of the OneDrive accounts, not just who they are and who owns it, but how much storage was used, how many files, how many sharing links. Oh, 8. What do those look like? Now, sometimes people go, oh, you can see the names of the files in the OneDrive. Yes, you can. I can't click into them. I can click on it, but I can't get into it because we are respecting that. But remember, this is owned by the organization. Personal work storage, right? So I can come in, get some good views of what's going on around OneDrive in my organization. Smart actions as an admin, maybe I want to delete the sharing links coming out of an unlicensed OneDrive account, close down those potential security risks, and find out who complains that they now can't get to the spreadsheet they use for all of their data. You can also create policies that reach out to the owners of these OneDrive spaces, we're calling them spaces, and ask them, is it appropriate for anyone with access to your stuff to have Copilot using it for grounding? You want to clean up some versions? Maybe you don't need 500 versions of every file in your OneDrive. Maybe, might depend on the file. And sharing links, right? You could choose to ask them to go through and prune their sharing links. Now, I will say with Orchestry, when we show sharing links, it is full history of every sharing link that was ever created ever for that content. So I'm kind of excited about that. I just wanted to take half a second to show this off before I go back and have mine and Mark's contact info up on the screen, because we are at time now. Thank you for everyone that has hung out with us through all the content. I'm going to put not the brand slide. We don't need that.
And then I was going to ask selfishly if I could grab 30 to 60 seconds just to show the 2 demos that didn't quite work. It's a quick one, but if not,
of course,
I totally understand.
I think so. You guys up for it? I'm always up for a demo.
Just for what's on the screen here, never opposed to getting an email with a question or a kudo if you liked what you saw today or anything, or on LinkedIn. Both of us are fairly active, whether that's public postings, commenting on a post, commenting on other posts, or if you want to send a DM, never opposed to that. And certainly anything that's Orchestry product related, that's going to be mostly Joy and her team, but that hello at Orchestry, super responsive team, not because we have this in as a partner, but I've seen them at events and certainly replying. If you ever have sort of a how we might use this tool in a real customer use case scenario, the folks here at Sympraxis have used the tool a lot in the scenarios that lead up to needing the tool or wanting to have the tool to do a lot of the provisioning and management and reporting a lot more easy at scale. But
let's do it.
All right, I'm gonna do the quick share here because hopefully it's worth seeing. But this is the blog agent that I tried to create just to prove it. There is the blogs agent Orchestry that's now created. That was the one that I had to fall back on in demo. And I won't really do much more of the demo just to show you what I asked it. This was off of those 4 Word documents asking a certain amount of questions. It was able to go, and it even says, thanks for looking. I looked through all 4 documents. That's its response. And then I asked another question about a summary of one of the episodes, and it gave me a really nice drill down. And then eventually I was just asking it, was there, did we provide a link to a specific tool that was part of our blog? I can't remember if I shared that link. And it gave me the answer of yes and kind of pointed my way. So I was asking a question in the normal chat experience within Microsoft 365, the main UI. If I went to m365.cloud.microsoft, and I now have this unique agent, I can even share it with other people. I can make new agents and collect them, and of course remove them in any way. So this is an agent created on OneDrive content. The other thing we wanted to share real quickly, I'll go back to our Archie, and hopefully this won't block me, but if I wanted to go in and move this pitch deck, the action is to select it or to go into the drop down. You'll see this move to or copy to. If I go into move to, this should allow me to do it because it's not necessarily creating new content, but just moving it. And I'm going to take this pitch deck and I'm going to put it here in the project work, or I could put it into one of these shared spaces, which is kind of the point, going from OneDrive to a shared experience. So I'm going to click into this one shared added to OneDrive place. And when I click move to, it'll show up here in that shared space. And it is just that. The one important thing I wanted to call out is if I had permissioned people to, because I shared it with them outside of putting it in a shared space, I can either remove all of that history of who I've shared it with, and now it's only available to the people in the new shared space, or I can keep that history of sharing, which I think is important, because when you move content, you don't want to change people's access or their ability to get back to what they already had access to. So when you move it, it'll give you a sense of what it's doing. It's going to then disappear from here and should appear into that shared space once it's done. Hopefully not taking too much longer. Come on,
let's all stare at it. Everybody
you can do it. Look,
at
it's halfway and it's just thinking about it. But eventually, sometimes it just works.
Trust Mark, it works.
Even though there's the pitch deck, so it did work. And you can see who the owner was because Archie had started it. But now it's in this shared space, which is a team
Ray
site.
is asking a question, and I love this question. Does that mean it's now the source of truth? I got a feeling you agree with me. SharePoint should always be the capital T source of truth.
I would say always, because
never OneDrive.
Even though there are lots of version capabilities, you might have multiple versions. You don't want to have multiple copies. Versions are kind of sub-elements of a main file, right? And you can dial up and down how many versions you have. But if I put something either in OneDrive or SharePoint or move it, and in the sense maybe even copy it, that's where you start to have multiple copies as it sounds. But if I'm moving a file, I start it in OneDrive and I move it into a shared team space and might even get moved into something that's then archived. It is the same single source of truth that we're just moving and giving different permissions to. But it is maybe from draft to finished copy to archive, the same thing. And the lifecycle management of it is what you're managing in a manual way, with the way that we're showing it. But it is the single source of truth, not only the storage mechanism, SharePoint, but the file itself is just one file, not just version for Mark, version for the team, version for archive everybody in the history. And that's nice to keep that in mind in terms of your governance plan. Where to move content, who owns it, where to start it. Those are all things to think through. And they may be different for different work streams, but great question. Hopefully a really good answer in terms of how the technology works. But some of it is, how do you use the technology? The technology will only do what you tell it to in the context of what it can do, and it certainly can support those work streams. The last thing I wanted to show here, and I think I have it in this event space, is this is in my real OneDrive. This is in an events folder, the event being today's webinar. I created a folder, I colored it green, and inside this is nothing but a SharePoint URL file, which is called a link, in the context of I went in here and I created a link. And this is a link to, if you hover over it, and it's the OneDrive in AI era, that is the link that Joy originally shared with me. I can go back into my email and I can find the share email that was sent based on her share to me. But because I wanted to kind of manage it like a file, but I didn't want to make a copy, I just created a shortcut, literally, as a link that if I click this would open up the full PowerPoint, which is right here. So it's in her OneDrive when you look at the URL. Orchestry software .my-personal, and there's Joy right there.
It's me.
And so it's a shortcut to Joy, which, if I wanted to, I could get really popular on LinkedIn and I could create a shortcut to Joy. But anyway, thank you for letting me fix my demos. We might have lost a few people there, but it's on record, and OneDrive does work when you're signed in properly.
Yes. And moving will maintain versions.
Yep.
And if you have metadata, if you have columns and the columns match when you move, your metadata will come over either. And now that I've said the word, I have to say my favorite pun. I've never metadata I didn't like. So if you can, do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Okay. We are beyond that time, but
Yep.
troopers, you have hung with us into overtime, much like Olympic hockey. Guys are great. It's amazing. Thanks for being here. We will have some assets to follow up. There were some questions, Mark, about how you created those OneDrive agents. So maybe some follow-up content on that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great link out there that's a Microsoft support article, and it's just a hair different from creating a SharePoint agent, but it really is in the context of what you saw. It will walk you through how to create an agent in OneDrive. I'll actually share what I think is a really great, kind of better than the Microsoft support, even though Microsoft support is always good. It's just the big blog that the OneDrive team put out around OneDrive agents. They kind of frame it in the context of Copilot in OneDrive. But it is all really focused on using Copilot in the context of your OneDrive content, one of those things being creating an agent off of your content.
Perfect.
So there's a lot of great things that you can do. It's almost simplified for OneDrive, but it's really the same Copilot Studio experience, very light version inside of OneDrive.
Love it. So to make it easy, I'm going to strong arm Mark. He'll send us the link. We'll include that with the assets that are going to go out to everybody that was here and registered. So we'll make it easy for you.
Sounds great.
Right.
Easy to do. And okay.
I know it hurts when I twist your arm. I know. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Wonderful. As always. Thank you. Thank you everyone for hanging out. We'll see you the next time around.
It was a joy working with you. And it was great to see everybody, the engagement in the chat, the interest in OneDrive. I think is one of those things that, you take it for granted, but don't take it for granted. Use it for what it's there for. And maybe you learned a few things today that give you a sense of maybe how to craft and work with OneDrive a little bit better.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.